Welcome to today's podcast episode. Today, we'll discuss the things people only learn when their freedom is taken away. A topic that might sound foreign, even frightening to many. But you don't need to experience it to understand, because the storyteller in today's episode has done it for you. I will share with you the fragments of memories, the precious reflections that I gathered during the seemingly endless days behind cold iron bars. I vividly remember the day I was released from prison. The sky that day was extraordinarily blue, the sun heavy as if newly washed. A heartbreakingly clear beauty, a stark contrast to the gray, suffocating space I had just left behind. But in my heart, there was no elation, no bursting joy like in the movies. Instead, a worry, a vague uncertainty enveloped me. Because going back to life, reintegrating into a world I had once turned my back on, is never easy for someone who has taken wrong steps. The scrutinizing gazes, the difficult questions, the suspicion still lurked somewhere. I knew the road ahead would not be paved with roses. But it was during the darkest days in prison, in that space where time seemed to stand still, where the familiar sounds of life were stifled, that I learned 10 life-changing lessons. These lessons are not lofty philosophies, but simple truths that I deeply felt with my very being, through long sleepless nights and silent tears. Today, I want to share these with you, not to dwell on the past, but so that you can perceive life more profoundly, cherish what you have more, and avoid the stumbles I once experienced. 1. Freedom is a state of mind, not geography. Sounds cliché, doesn't it? When 4 walls surround you, when every action is controlled, when time is counted by the dry clang of a bell, then geographical freedom is a luxury, a dream you don't dare to dream. But it was in that space where all physical freedom was stripped away that I gradually realized a deeper truth. True freedom originates from within the mind. I witnessed fellow inmates who, though their bodies were imprisoned, their souls still soared. They found freedom in worn-out book pages, in stories told of a beautiful outside world, in memories of loved ones. They kept their minds from being confined by resentment, by the torment of the past. They learned to accept reality, find small joys in prison life, and nurture hope for a brighter tomorrow. Conversely, I also saw people who, though released from prison, though living in a vast society, still had their minds imprisoned. They were trapped in the obsessions of the past, in resentment towards those who had caused them pain, in the pressures to become someone, according to society's standards. They lost the ability to enjoy the simple things in life, always feeling insecure and unfree. The hard-earned lesson I learned is, don't let yourself be imprisoned in your own head. Freedom is not a place, but a state of mind. You might be sitting in a large house, but if your mind is full of worries, fears, and negative thoughts, you are still in an invisible prison. Conversely, if you learn to let go of the burdens in your mind, accept what cannot be changed, and focus on the positive, you will find freedom even in the most difficult circumstances. Train your mind. Release it from the invisible chains of resentment, worry, and unrealistic expectations. That is true freedom. 2. Regret is only valuable when it accompanies action. During the long nights in prison, when only darkness and sighs were your companions, regret was an uninvited guest, gnawing at your heart. I spent countless hours blaming myself, weeping for the mistakes I had made, for the people who had suffered because of me. I could draw up thousands of what-if scenarios, wishing I had made different decisions. But then I realized a bitter truth. Regret, no matter how deep, is just a passive, meaningless emotion if it doesn't come with action. I could cry all day for past mistakes, but if tomorrow I still lived the same way, still didn't change bad habits, still didn't try to make up for the harm caused, then that regret was just a way to deepen the wound, a useless self-torture. The true value of regret lies in its ability to motivate us to act. It must be the fire that ignites the will to change, the motivation for us to correct mistakes, make amends for losses, and become a better person. Sincere regret will lead to concrete actions, a heartfelt apology, an effort to mend broken relationships, a commitment not to repeat similar mistakes. I saw fellow inmates who, after months and years of regret, began to change from the smallest things, learning to respect others, participating in rehabilitation activities, helping those less fortunate. They turned regret into motivation to rebuild their lives, to prove that they deserved a second chance. So, don't let regret just be a psychological burden. Turn it into a source of strength, a reminder to live better, to act differently. See past mistakes as valuable lessons, and use them to guide the future. Regret is only truly valuable when it is accompanied by positive actions, relentless efforts for redemption and change. 3. Humanity can blossom in the darkest places. Prison is a harsh place, where competition, suspicion, and selfishness seem to be survival instincts. But strangely enough, it was in that seemingly inhuman darkness that I witnessed the flowers of sharing, compassion, and friendship bloom. I remember one cold evening when I was seriously ill and couldn't eat anything. A fellow inmate, someone I hadn't talked to much before, shared half of his meager instant noodles with me. That half pack of noodles, in the extreme scarcity, was worth more than a lavish feast in a bank account. It wasn't just food, it was concern, a warm gesture of sharing between people in the same predicament. I witnessed fellow inmates supporting each other, sharing difficulties, encouraging each other to get through the dark days. They read books together, told stories, played makeshift games to kill time and keep their spirits from collapsing. They protected the weaker ones, shared the little they had, and gave each other sincere words of encouragement. It was in that harsh environment that I realized that humanity is an instinctual need, a latent power that can arise anywhere, even in seemingly hopeless places. It does not depend on social status or material wealth, but is simply empathy, understanding, and compassion between people. The lesson I learned is, never lose faith in humanity, even in the most difficult circumstances. There are always kind people willing to lend you a helping hand, no matter where you are. And conversely, always be ready to share and help those around you, even if it's just a small act. Because it is those small actions that create invisible bonds, warm cold hearts, and bring hope to the darkest places. 4. Never blame the past. In the early days of prison, I often asked myself, why me? Why do I have to endure this? I looked for external reasons to blame for my mistakes. Difficult family circumstances, the temptations of friends, social injustice. I believed that without those factors, I wouldn't have gone down the path of crime. But over time, when I had enough time to reflect quietly, I gradually realized that blaming the past is an evasion of responsibility. The past is something no one can change. What happened has happened. Constantly clinging to and resenting the past only keeps us trapped in suffering and unable to move forward. I witnessed fellow inmates who, despite having a past full of hurt and misfortune, chose not to let the past define their future. They accepted what had happened, learned from their mistakes, and focused on building a better life ahead. They understood that the future begins with the decisions they make today. The lesson I learned is, stop blaming the past. Accept it as part of your life story, a valuable source of experience for you to grow. Instead of resenting what's gone, focus on the present and the future. You cannot change what has happened, but you have the complete right to decide how you will live from now on. Forgive yourself and those who have hurt you in the past. Let go of the burdens of resentment and focus on building a brighter future, based on the right decisions you make today. 5. Silence helps us hear the truth. In the noisy life outside, we are often surrounded by countless sounds, traffic, conversations, music, phone rings. We rarely have time to truly listen to ourselves, to hear the silent voices from the depths of our hearts. But in prison, the external noise is cut off. Initially, the silence can be frightening, even uncomfortable. But gradually, in that quiet space, I began to hear the true sounds in my heart more clearly. It was the voice of regret for the mistakes made, the voice of remorse for missed opportunities, and also the voice of an inner child, a vulnerable and hurt part of me that just wanted to be loved and accepted again. In silence, I could face myself most honestly, not distracted by external influences. I could see more clearly the real motives behind my actions, my fears, and my deepest desires. Silence gave me the opportunity to listen to my conscience, to better understand the true values of life. The lesson I learned is, make time for silence. In today's busy life, try to find quiet moments to listen to yourself. It could be a few minutes of meditation each day, a walk in nature, or simply sitting quietly alone. In silence, you will hear truths that you often miss in the noise of life. You will reconnect with yourself, better understand what you truly want, and what you need to change to live a more meaningful life. 6. Happiness is the simple things we think are insignificant. Before going to prison, I often defined happiness by big things. A successful career, vast wealth, luxurious travels. I was always chasing distant goals, forgetting the simple joys right beside me. But in prison, when all material comforts were stripped away, I truly realized the value of the things I had previously considered small, even unnoticed. A warm family meal, hearing the voice of a loved one, a sincere hug, or simply being able to decide where I would go tomorrow morning. All those things, when lost, became priceless. Happiness is not a distant destination, but the ordinary moments in everyday life. It's a hot cup of coffee in the morning, a smile from a stranger, a roadside flower, a melodious piece of music. We are often too busy pursuing big things to notice the small joys that are present all around us. The lesson I learned is, cherish the simple things in life. Happiness is not something too lofty or hard to find. It is hidden in the most ordinary things, in sincere relationships, in the present moments. Learn to feel and be grateful for the little things you have, because it is those little things that create a happy and meaningful life. 7. Forgiveness is not for anyone else, but for yourself. During my time in prison, I held a lot of resentment in my heart. I resented the people who had caused me pain, the people who had pushed me down the path of crime. I believed that holding on to that bitterness was a way for them to pay the price. But over time, I realized that the person who was most tired was not them, but me. Resentment was like a slow-acting poison, gnawing at my soul, preventing me from finding peace. It tied me to the past, not giving me a chance to move on. Then I understood that forgiveness is not an altruistic act for others, but a priceless gift I give to myself. Forgiveness helps me uproot the pain of the past, freeing my soul from the burdens of resentment. It's like putting painful memories into a locked drawer so that I can walk forward on the path ahead more lightly. The lesson I learned is, learn to forgive, not only others, but also yourself. Forgive past mistakes, the hurts you have experienced. Holding on to resentment only harms you. Forgiveness will bring peace to your soul, help you break free from the chains of the past, and open your heart to a brighter future. 8. You are not what you have done. In society, we are often judged based on our actions, especially our wrongdoings. Once you have made a mistake, you can be labeled for life, seen as this kind of person or that kind of person, based on what you have done. In prison, I felt the same way. I was seen as a criminal, someone who had lost all value. I felt ashamed and insecure about what I had caused. But then I realized that past actions do not define my entire being. I had done many wrong things, but that didn't mean I was inherently a bad person. I also had good aspirations, a desire to make amends and start my life over. I saw fellow inmates who, despite having committed serious crimes, still had good qualities, kind hearts. They were trying to change, learn, and become better people. And I believe that everyone deserves a second chance. We should not be defined by past mistakes, but by our efforts for redemption and to move towards a better future. 9. Everyone has a story. In prison, I met many people with different circumstances and stories. Each person had their own past, their own pains, and the difficulties they had had to endure. Sometimes, their actions seemed incomprehensible or reprehensible, but when you listened to their story, you began to understand the motives and factors that had led them down that path. I learned that you shouldn't rush to judge someone based only on what you see on the surface. You don't know what they have been through, the burdens they are carrying. Judgment can cause deep hurt and prevent understanding and empathy between people. This lesson also applies to myself. I used to be very hard on myself, always blaming and tormenting myself for past mistakes. But then I realized that I also had my own story, the difficulties and hurts that had contributed to shaping who I am. Instead of self-blame, I learned to love and accept myself more, with all my flaws and mistakes. Remember that each of us has our own story. Learn to listen and understand, not only others but also yourself. Treat yourself and those around you with patience, compassion, and respect. 10. Rebirth is real. When the prison door closed behind me, I thought I had lost everything. Freedom, honor, future. I felt like my life had ended. But it turned out that only when I was stripped of everything I had once valued did I have the opportunity to look at life in a completely new way. I discarded the illusions, the wrong values I had once pursued. I learned to cherish the things that truly mattered: family, sincerity, and the opportunity to start my life over. I realized that loss is not always the end. Sometimes it is a new beginning, an opportunity for rebirth. Just like a tree sheds its leaves in winter to prepare for a fresh spring, sometimes we have to go through difficult periods of loss to be able to grow and develop. The final lesson I learned is, rebirth is real. No matter what you have been through, no matter what you have lost, you always have the ability to start over, to build a new, more meaningful life. Discard what is no longer needed, the burdens of the past, and open your heart to new opportunities. Rebirth may not be easy, but it is entirely possible if you have enough will and faith. You don't have to go to prison to understand these lessons. But if you are being held captive by an invisible prison of your mind, your past, or some pain, remember, freedom is always waiting outside the door of your heart. Open it, even just a crack. Then the light will come in. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you found these shares meaningful, please don't hesitate to share them with those you believe need a little light and understanding in their lives. The spread of these stories can make a big difference to someone who is struggling. To not miss the next podcast episodes with other valuable stories and lessons, please remember to subscribe to our channel. Your support is a great motivation for us to continue bringing meaningful content. Please press the like button if this episode touched your heart. And finally, don't forget to share it with those you think need a word of encouragement, a source of inspiration to overcome difficulties and find hope ahead.